With February having just started, and the obvious fact that Frontier is hard at work on their next DLC for Planet Zoo, my best guess is that by the end of March, we should have some new content for the game. And so I feel like right now would be a good time to go ahead and do a video about 20 animals I personally still want to see being added into the game. Now before we begin, there are a few rules I'd like to talk about first. The first being the fact that this list not only contains just habitat animals, but also tank animals as well, as there are just some I want to see added into the game. Hope you all can respect that. Speaking of tank animals, while there are 20 animals on this list, as you've seen in the title, the first 5 are all tank animals, and it's like that for 2 reasons. First thing, I wanted to talk about the tank animals first to kind of get them out of the way, because ultimately, what's more exciting, habitat or tank animals? But secondly, they're also still in sequential order. The first 5 are there because they're just not as exciting as the rest. So it works both ways for me, so please don't be confused when we talk about only tank animals for the first 5. And as for the last rule goes, it's important to remember that all these animals are animals I personally believe Frontier could add to the game right now, so we're not counting animals that are in a faraway DLC like a marine pack or an avian pack or especially a prehistoric pack. Nothing like that, only animals that would fit the game nicely right now. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. The Cobalt blue tarantula is seemingly one of the more unlikely animals of the entire list. I'm sure that most people, including Frontier themselves, would seemingly skip over this animal simply because it's very unprevalent and not much of a common species in general, but you cannot deny that this arachnid is very pretty. I love the blue look of it, and you know what, even though I respect the fact that it may never make the game, I would sure as heck appreciate it if it did. The Caiman Lizard is very prevalently kept in zoo captivity. Almost every zoo I've gone to has had these guys, and honestly I feel like because of that, and the fact that they are just very beautiful lizards, large, full of color, I honestly believe that they deserve a good place in the game, and I'm kinda surprised they haven't actually made it in launch. King Cobras are another very surprising tank exclusion in my opinion. They're very much indeed a classic snake species, and rightfully so deserve a place in the game. I mean, I imagine one reason they may have been excluded is their ability to, stand up and give a menacing position, menacing pose, and maybe Frontier didn't want to take the time to animate that, but honestly, they need to be included. These guys are, in my opinion, one of the very few tank animals a lot of people are keeping their fingers crossed for, and honestly I still think I am, because it's just awesome. It's a really cool looking lizard, and just like the rest of the animals I've talked about, kind of surprised it was excluded, but I think it should be included very soon, maybe even in an upcoming Australian pack. There's really not much to say about this animal besides the fact that the Eyelash Viper is my favorite snake in the world, and so that alone is the real big reason as to why it's on this list. I'd say the only problem and the only thing that may keep it from actually being included is its size. It's a lot smaller than some of you might think, but it's so beautiful and so dangerous, and I would absolutely love it if Frontier would eventually add it into the game. To kick off the habitat animals at number 15 is the bald Vakari. This is one of the rarest primates in all of South America and hardly ever kept in captivity within its own native range, and can only be found at the Los Angeles Zoo outside of its native range. And so having these guys in our zoos would be true treasure because they're just so rare, and honestly I love the look. They have such a funky, cool look, and I'd just absolutely love it if they were to make it into the game. Striped hyena are pretty rare and, quite frankly, beautiful animals that can be found throughout Africa to even Asia. Honestly, even though they don't really appear in zoos, I feel like this is a species Frontier will eventually pick as more of a surprising choice, but really it won't be surprising because honestly it just feels like something Frontier would pick. I think they're beautiful, and I'd honestly love to have them in a future African pack of some kind. The Capybara, while may not fit with, say, a conservation focused pack, would for sure fit with a hopefully upcoming South American pack. You'll notice that there are a lot of South American animals on this list as we head our way through, but I'll tell you right now, the capybara are actually one of my favorites. My zoo just opened up a new capybara exhibit, and I love them. They're gigantic rodents, and I feel like would fit into the game really easily. I could easily imagine this animal being in the game, and I'd love to have them. Koalas are one of the most heavily requested animals right now for an hopefully upcoming Australian pack. Personally, even though I at one point didn't think they'd make it into the game, and I was right, they didn't, I actually now think they will. I hope so. After seeing and experiencing, say, the red panda, which would be a good animal to model it off of in terms of the arborealness of it, I believe the koala will make it in very soon, actually. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. They are very cute, and who wouldn't want a koala in their zoo? Take everything I just said about the koala and carry it over to the red kangaroo. This is an animal that everyone is asking for, including myself. Everyone's keeping their fingers crossed for a hopeful, eventual Australian DLC. This is an animal that just is kind of crazy to think was actually excluded from the game. I mean, it's such a classic zoo animal. It will make it into the game one day. I have almost zero doubt, and I'm very excited to see what they will do with it when the time comes. Going back to South America, this is one of the most heartbreaking exclusions in the entire game, in my opinion. I love giant anteaters, as do a lot of people, and it just, like I said, can only feel heartbroken that Frontier did not include them. And as I've said before, with the hopeful South American pack on the way, this is an animal that now has a chance to make it into the game, and I am for sure counting on it. I need the giant anteater, as do a lot of people. I was really saddened when I found out that one of my favorite African birds, the gray-crowned crane, was actually endangered and is still declining right now. I realized that if it was not to make it in through an obvious African DLC, I feel like this animal would be a great conservation-focused pack. You know, this would be an animal that we have a chance to currently help before it gets worse. And honestly, why would you not, right? This animal is just gorgeous, a beautiful bird of Africa. I would love it to be in the game, as I really believe we need some cranes. Spectacled or Andean bears are actually my favorite bear species, and I understand why it was excluded from the game. It's not really the most for sure animal to make it. You know, it could quite easily come in as a DLC, and I'm very hopeful it will. And while it may not be the first choice for a South American DLC, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, as are a lot of the South American animals. This is a very beautiful bear, last short-faced bears, and I would truly love it. I also really don't have a doubt that it will make it into the game somehow, someway, one day. Giant otters are actually now one of my favorite animals. My local zoo has just gotten them for like the very first time. It's a new animal to them, new animal to me, and I love them. After spending hours of watching them, doing their thing, they're really loud, really crazy, and they pretty much eat anything you'll give them. I mean, they are carnivores. They even famously eat anacondas. I fell in love with this animal, and now, of course, I really want it to be in the game. And if it wasn't to fit in a South American DLC, I would honestly say it would be a good conservation-focused DLC, because unfortunately this animal is endangered. Okay guys, so at number 6 and 5, I'm doing something differently. Both these animals I love so much and are both very interchangeable, and I really can't put one over the other. I was actually almost tempted to put them both at like this 6th spot, but I can't do that. And so they could either one of them could be at 5 or 6. As I said, very interchangeable. It's really up for you guys to decide which one do you want more, the eastern black rhinoceros or the southern white rhinoceros. For me, as I said, I just can't put one over the other. I love them both so much, and I really believe either one of them can make it into the game easily, or actually hopefully both of them will. I'd say it'd be really good to have both. I have a bit of more of a preference for each one. I have a different preference for. The eastern black rhinoceros, I would say, has a greater chance of coming in because of its conservation status. And it just makes sense, you know, the game is clearly focused on conservation. And also, the southern white rhinoceros, I have more of a preference for, because my local zoo actually has a southern white rhinoceros, and I've seen them. I've gotten up close to them, and I love them. They're both these rhino species are beautiful, respected. They should be respected. Unfortunately, they really aren't sometimes, and I'd be very happy to have either one of them, or if not both. So I hope you guys can understand this weird 5 and 6 kind of combo one, but yeah, hopefully I made my point across. Let's move on now to number 4. The southern cassowary is basically the world's most dangerous bird. It is also my favorite bird in the world. They are truly beautiful and yet so dangerous. They are basically like the last living dinosaur. Plus, to top it all off, my zoo has a couple of them, and I've gotten really close to them, and they're really impressive. And honestly, I would say they fit into the game. They would fit into the game very easily. I guess it's just a matter of time. If they weren't to make it into a suspected Australian pack, then maybe just a tropical pack, or maybe even more really specifically a New Zealand pack. Who knows for sure, but I keep my fingers crossed. Before I talk about the last 3, we have some honorable mentions. Bushmasters are a very cool South American snake that would complement the game nicely. Tasmanian devils are another for surefire animal for Australian DLC and are actually one of my favorites. I'm pretty content with Asia, but if I had to add one more type of Asian animal, I would probably pick the Malayan sun bear, as it's actually another one of my favorite bear species. Black howlers are actually like one of my favorite South American primates and also the largest, and so I feel like they'd be great inclusions to have in the game eventually. Officially on to the last 3 animals. The moose is one of my favorite animals of all North America, if not my favorite, and honestly my favorite of all the cervine deer species. And what I really like about it is it's the only deer that I actually find scary, intimidating I should say, because moose do not seem like animals you would want to mess with, and so I give them respect for that. I think deer usually get kind of underrated in zoos, and the moose is just one that will not. It is an animal that requires a lot of maintenance, despite the fact that it really doesn't look like it. They get easily stressed out and could easily cause some damage. I love the moose. They are beautiful, and honestly, I would pay any money that there is to have these guys in the game. I really want some moose. And officially on to the last 2. Number 2 is one of just the most shocking animal exclusions there is, the American alligator. This animal I was absolutely stunned when I found out it was not in the game. I mean, there was so many hints, so much evidence. I mean, it was found in the files. There were decorations of articles more than once mentioned actual alligators in the game, and they did not mistake them for saltwater crocodiles, because they even mentioned saltwater crocodiles on that same article. And so all the hints, I mean, part of me felt a little wrecked to discover that it did not make the game. I can't believe my own neighbor didn't make the game. I am a Floridian, so I see these guys every once in a while, and they're really cool. I love them. And I also really don't have much of a doubt that they will make it in one day. They're just too much of a common crocodilian. Alright, for those who have been a fan of my channel for a while, number 1 will probably not surprise you, but it is in fact the Jaguar. One of the worst animal exclusions, I'd have to say. I could not believe that they actually excluded the Jaguar. It is just one of my favorite animals. They are so beautiful. My zoo has a few of them. I've gotten so close to them right through a simple panel of glass, and I gotta say, they are very impressive. I love their patterning. It's just gorgeous. And I'm, again, like I've said before in the past, keeping my fingers crossed. This time, so tight that my fingers are starting to bleed. I need the Jaguar. And my best guess is that they will be an animal for sure on the top of their bucket list. I would honestly not be surprised if they are working on a Jaguar as I speak, and then are in fact making a South American DLC with this ferocious, gorgeous cat. That is my best get, and my best guess. And I hope you guys agree with my number 1 choice. I know other people have different opinions. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below. Try to be a bit more careful about my editing this time in this video. I hope it looks better. And like I said before, guys, please let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what your animals are, what animals you want to see added. Please remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. Bye-bye.